This is the Raptors Postcast, your instant game reaction for the Toronto Raptors. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network covering your team every day. And we're coming to you live after the Raptors' 128-96 win against the Memphis Grizzlies. A bounce-back victory in the grindhouse that hopefully built some much-needed momentum. So we're here to talk about it on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Locked On Podcast feed. I'm Zulfi Sheikh, credentialed journalist covering the Raptors and the NBA for over 2 years now with outlets like Sportsnet and Raptors Republic. And now I'm one of your humble hosts of the Raptors Postcast, breaking down each and every game with you. And with me, like always, unfortunately, is not Dwayne Notice. Yes, our professional basketball player and analyst is out hooping professionally, so he wasn't able to make it today, but I will be holding it down while he returns on Sunday. And on tonight's show, we're going to talk about how the Raptors showed us what they were about. We're going to break down Jamal Shead's unsung impact, get some thoughts from our resident pro in a segment we like to call Take Notice. I'm lying. He's not here. That's just from my script. But I'm going to take over the Take Notice segment tonight. And then we'll wrap things up by handing out our player of the game. So let's get into it with our initial impressions like we always do.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right. After a pretty embarrassing loss, I think that's fair to say, to the Sacramento Kings, RJ Barrett kept it very simple heading into tonight when he said, we have to show what we're about. And with a resounding win, rightfully so, against the Skeleton Crew Grizzlies, who were down like 10 or 11 guys, the Raptors proved they understood how desperately they needed to come out in this game. Look, it was far from perfect between the end of the first and the start of the second. Things did get a little bit ugly. But once the Raptors were able to lock in, they reminded us just how effective this team can be when they play their style, and it's firing on all cylinders. You had 6 guys scoring double figures. RJ Barrett led the way with 25 points. Shout out Jacoby Walter, who put up a season-high 8 rebounds. He was a plus 39 as well. And then the Raptors also got back to doing what they do defensively and being disruptive. They had slipped a little bit defensively the last couple of games, but they hold Memphis under 100 points. They forced 20 turnovers for 28 points as well. You beat them down in the paint, 70-46. Beat them on the glass, get 16 second chance points, and then 21-5 advantage on the fast break as well. So just like taking care of business in all areas of this game. And I think a big part of why the Raptors were able to accomplish that is because of how intentional they were about their offense and applying rim pressure tonight. Like, I think it goes without saying that they need to start taking advantages of matchups with more awareness. And against the Memphis Grizzlies, with no Zach Edey, missing a bunch of other guys, there's no real like rim presence or paint controlling bigs there. So guys like Jakob Poeltl and CMB are going to be especially important. But then guys like Brandon Ingram and RJ Barrett and the pressure they can apply on the rim and being consistent about getting there, I think can also make a big difference for a team where they don't have rim protection like the Memphis Grizzlies. And the Raptors were very intentional about that. I already mentioned it, 70 points in the paint, but even just like the plays that they were running, it was indicative of how the Raptors were trying to get good quality looks at the basket. The very first play of this game when the Raptors win the tip, what do? Brandon Ingram gets the ball above the break. He runs a pick and roll with Scotty. Scotty slips it, and then BI shorts the pick and roll by getting it to Jakob Poeltl on the right elbow. And then Yak throws a lob to Scotty, who's rolling back door. Thought that was a really nice play, and it really set the tone for what the Raptors wanted to do on offense. And the first play of the second half is similar, where they want to get to the rim. So Brandon Ingram, Chicago action out of the left corner, gets curling off of it, gets a DHO with Jakob Poeltl, and just immediately focuses on getting downhill. Doesn't settle short, goes right to the basket, through a bit of contact, and he's able to get a layup as well. So I thought the Raptors were being very intentional about applying pressure at the rim, and that worked in their favor tonight. Plus 34 in the paint. They saw 62% at the rim as well. Guy like RJ Barrett, constantly just putting his head down and shoulder first. CMB, I thought was great in this game too. He was really hustling to get behind his defender, get downhill towards the basket. He got some really good seals where he got hit with a couple of hit-ahead passes and was able to get up at the rim as well. I'm going to talk more about him later in this episode as well. Guy like Mamu, attacking closeouts effectively in this game, wasn't just settling for the threes. He got to the free throw line a couple times because he was willing to really take that contact and go with it. Even a guy like Brandon Ingram, I thought he toggled really well between settling short on his jumpers, but also continuing downhill when needed to. He was even effective tonight with weaponizing the attention he was getting in the paint and then also getting assists off of that. He had 5 assists. Really nice heads-up passes. I think the first one he had tonight was when he pulled up for the jumper and then he saw Jakob kind of slipping in toward the basket, so he kind of just threw a dump-off pass where he canceled his jumper midway. I thought that was really cool from Brandon Ingram as well. But overall, the Raptors came out and executed with a lot of intentionality on that end of the floor, getting to the rim, quality looks, not settling and stopping in the half court. They didn't let themselves fall into the trap where they have sometimes where they get into this three-point battle with other teams. We've talked plenty about how the Raptors aren't the strongest three-point shooting team, and there's been times where they've tried to keep up with their opponents, even though they're not the most efficient. But even a night like tonight, where the Raptors saw Memphis hit something like 4 threes in the first quarter, a guy like Javon Small, he got it going a little bit, and the Memphis Grizzlies were able to cut into that lead for a short period. The Raptors didn't all of a sudden start trying to match that. They just kept putting more pressure at the rim, getting downhill, and they didn't really fall victim to it. And that was, again, it speaks to the execution. It speaks to the desperation of following the game plan and knowing that this was a must-win situation where everyone had to be on the same page. And they were able to execute upon that, which was good to see. But like I said, it wasn't 48 minutes of dominance, I would say. I would say it's more like 40. After the Raptors started 5 of 5 from the field to start this game and an 11-0 run, they did go 3 of 11 to end the first quarter, and then briefly even gave up the lead to Memphis in the second when the Memphis started the second quarter on an 8-2 run. And I think a part of the reason why was the Raptors really got in their own way with complaining about the foul calls and the whistles. It's something you've seen from people at times, but it was a little excessive, honestly, for the Raptors, and it got them really mucked up for a little bit. Offensively, at one point in the first quarter, they had committed 5 turnovers, which was unlike them, and that was possibly getting to them. The Grizzlies were trying to be extra physical with the Raptors, maybe forcing some of those turnovers, and you saw a guy like Scotty, even RJ, and hell, Jakob Poeltl was complaining quite a bit in the first quarter, and I almost never see that guy complain, especially to the degree that he did in this. Scotty Barnes, at one point, after committing 2 turnovers, he got the ball, I want to say, close to the left block, and then he did get clipped on a reaching foul, and you could have argued that probably should have been a whistle, but it was kind of surprising to see him literally just stop playing basketball. He held onto the ball, looked at the ref, and started complaining a little bit, hoping to somehow, I guess, convince the referee to get the foul call there, and then wasted 8 to 10 seconds of the shot clock, which was surprising. So the Raptors were really getting in their own way for a little bit between the end of the first and start of the second. But once they were able to lock in and really focus on executing and like not getting distracted by things that weren't basketball, committing to the little things in the game, you showed why this team is just steps ahead of the Memphis Grizzlies and why they were clearly the team that was trying to win this game versus the Grizzlies that clearly weren't. So it was good to see them lock in. And I think a big part of that and a big part of them really settling down was the impact of Jamal Shead, of all players, the sophomore, him stepping up and really steadying the boat when things were rocking. So I wanted to make sure we showed him some love as well.
It's time to reveal who made the biggest under-the-radar impact with today's X Factor.
Yeah, look, I said Jamal Shead's activity and taking care of the little things I thought were major in that second quarter, where the Raptors ended up going on a 14-3 run at one point. They forced 6 turnovers for 9 points in the quarter as well. And Shead's impact or fingerprints were just all over that because he was doing real floor general type stuff where like a lot of the scoring load was held by a guy like RJ Barrett, who had 12 points in the second quarter. But like the little things around it were hustling and corralling loose balls. He drew a charge in the second quarter as well, just constantly pushing the pace. He's been really good at that lately where he's finding hit-ahead passes. And what does that do for your bigs? It encourages them to keep running. CMB, like I mentioned, he just kept getting up and up at the floor. He had 19 points in this game. And that was because a lot of those came off passes from Jamal Shead, just finding him when he had a good seal up at the rim in transition. So that was effective from him as well. He even was able to show off some of his own offensive touch and craft where he got the ball in the left corner and a Memphis player kind of like half closed out towards him, but Jamal took it. It was almost like a stampede cut where he took it with some momentum. He didn't really catch the ball stagnant and was able to get inside, take contact after attacking the closeout, and even put up like almost like a push shot for an and one. So he was able to kind of bend the defense a little bit there. But overall in the second quarter, he has 5 points, 3 assists, and 2 steals when he finishes with 11 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 steals for the night. And he finished plus 14 in that quarter. He was really that swing factor, especially if you take in the fact that when the Raptors are going on that 14-3 run, he's there for pretty much all of it. And he's the one who's building a lot of this momentum. And it's indicative of just him kind of finding his rhythm lately, which is going to be obviously huge for the Raptors because Manny quickly still remains out. I believe he missed his 6th consecutive game tonight. We still don't really know exactly when he's going to be back, even though Darko Rajakovic said that eventually they're going to play IQ and they're going to have to just manage it. They're not just going to sit him and rest him for the entire rest of the season. But until then, it's nice to see Jamal Shead really stepping up and doing these point guardy things for the Raptors. his last 4 games entering tonight, he was averaging something like 8.5 points and over 9 assists a game as well. So for him to show all of that tonight and do it in a timely moment when the Raptors were reeling a little bit, I thought that was super important for his development, for the Raptors prospects moving forward. And again, when they do it against better competition, it's going to be something we want to continue seeing. But while IQ's out, it's nice to see Jamal Shead have a game like this and be, again, a floor general, a leader for the Raptors in the situations where they needed it. And somebody else who was really impactful for the Raptors in this game, I did allude to it, was Colin Murray-Boyles. And my favorite part about it is that he was kind of showing off his offensive craft beyond just the junky big man stuff, the garbage collecting. And that's what I want to talk about when we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast on the other side of the break. So stay tuned. All right, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament is here. It's one of the best times of the year. Brackets, buzzer beaters, upsets. It's nonstop action from tip to final cutdown. And boy, did we just witness a massive upset with SC beating UConn, and even some beef after it between Don Staley and Gino Auriemma. That's pretty interesting. But right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a way to stay in the action all tournament long. Here's the best part. You can get up to $300 back in bonus bets every day for 10 days. That means 10 chances to stay involved throughout the entire tournament. You can mix it up however you want. That's game picks, futures, or even same game parlays for bigger potential payouts. It's perfect for the tournament because every day there's something new. Different matchups, new storylines, and more ways to get involved as the bracket unfolds. So visit FanDuel.com to sign up today. That's FanDuel.com to get in on the action. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena, the crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Gametime has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast. Without hassle, it puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. And with only 3 home games left, that's right, 3 for the NBA regular season before postseason begins, now's a perfect time to find a bargain deal to enjoy some hoops at Scotiabank Arena. It's as simple as just pulling up the Gametime app, selecting an upcoming game, and having tickets secured within minutes. You see the all-in price up front. You even get to see the view from your seat, so there's no surprises after checkout. And you can even explore zone deals where you pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you get to save big. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. And remember, it's gametime.co, not .com. And lastly, this episode is brought to you by Robinhood. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long using your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game because it's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. And now I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people, where you're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. So trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Just download the Robinhood app now to begin. And remember, futures and cleared swap trades involve significant risk and are not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives, LLC, a registered futures commissions merchant and swap firm. All right, as we continue this episode of the Raptors Postcast, be sure to check out Sean Woodley after the weekend on Locked on Raptors to get more in-depth analysis of the Raptors' 128-96 win against the Memphis Grizzlies. And now we usually hand things over to our resident pro in Dwayne Notice. Unfortunately, he is not here, so I will take over the Take Notice segment of the game and try to do my best with it. And I wanted to shout out Colin Murray-Boyles, not just for the fact that he had 19 points and he was 7 of 10 from the field, 4 rebounds, and was plus 22. I thought his footwork and offensive just touch and craft in this game really did show out for the Raptors. Again, we already talked about he was doing the regular big man stuff where setting good screens, cleaning up inside, and being physical, and also, again, just constantly running ahead, getting down the floor behind his defenders, good seals for good post positions and at the basket. But I thought he was also somewhat creating for himself offensively. He had a couple plays where he got that entry pass, but he put the ball on the floor for a couple dribbles, used his shoulder, turned his body towards the basket, and got good looks off at the rim. And I think that's something that's growing for him. He's had such an up and down season because of injuries, but when he is healthy and he gets some consistency, you can see the type of impact he can have. With tonight's game, I believe that's 4 games out of his last 5 where he's had at least 10 points. He puts up 19 tonight. He had 20 a game or two ago. So he's really finding his rhythm offensively on that end. And if you can kind of get the ball to him and let him work a little bit, it does really give another layer to his game, because we've seen what he can do when people give the ball to him in advantageous positions. And he's so good at getting himself in good spots. Again, like whether that's behind a defender, whether that's in the low block, the dunker spot area, he can make so many things happen in those spaces. But when you're able to give him the ball in different spots of the court and he can get himself there with a bit of a dribble, I think that's really when he's adding a layer of depth to his game, where it's not where people have to really do a lot of the grunt work for him and creating the advantage. There's a really nice play where he had a pick and roll with Jamal Shead, and he caught it while rolling, and he Euro stepped past his defender to get a dunk at the basket. And he did that while also putting the ball on the deck for a dribble. Again, that's showing a bit more confidence in his handle, a bit more confidence in his footwork and his like movement offensively. And again, finishing strong with the dunk as well is something that we've talked about at times. He could probably do a bit more of. So for him, it was kind of indicative of just his like consistency, his continuity and growth these last couple of games, where he's been healthy and been out there, and you're seeing him kind of like flesh his game out a little bit. And that's hopefully something you can continue to see, not just the rest of this season, but as he continues to grow with the Toronto Raptors, because he's just shown how valuable and impactful he can be on both ends of the floor. There's multiple plays in this game where he was just like flying all over the court. I think it was in the first quarter at one point where he picks up a drive nearly full court, shuts it off, and then when Mamu attacks hard on a closeout and gets blown by his man, he switches out right away to cut that off. And then the ball gets kicked out to the other side, and he rotates over to help and contest the jumper. And had it not been for a Jacoby Walter foul on that possession at the end there, it would have been just this phenomenal defensive stop by the Raptors that was almost entirely strung by Colin Murray-Bowles. And that's the impact he can have even as a rookie defensively. But then when he adds the offensive game where there's layers to it, and it's not just the garbage collecting stuff, it really does just increase that upside for him and what he can do offensively. And that's very exciting to see for the Toronto Raptors. What else was exciting to see was another guy who's been kind of leading the way for the Raptors the last little bit now, and it's been very, very important for what they're trying to accomplish here. And it's time we show him some love in our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Yeah, look, I said it off the top that after last game, it was RJ Barrett that went up to the podium and had to address it and had to take accountability for the Raptors for that embarrassing performance against the Sacramento Kings. And he didn't shy away from it, to his credit. He said, we have to do better. He took accountability for himself as well. And he said they understood the desperation this team was going to have to play with. And when he comes out and scores a team high 25 points, he shoots 4 of 6 from 3, over 50% from the field. He has 4 assists as well and a block, being active all over the floor. I think it speaks to the leadership from him and how he's really just stepping up when the Raptors need it most. He led the team in scoring in March. He's having a pretty good start to April here too. And in tonight's game specifically, where the Raptors ran roughshod on the Grizzlies and got into the paint, kind of like RJ Barrett was incredibly impactful in that. He kind of almost led that charge. I talked about Jamal Shead's steadying presence in the second quarter. Well, RJ Barrett has 12 points there, where he did hit a 3 or 2, but it was mostly just him putting his head down, again, getting that shoulder, getting contact, getting deep into the paint, and that's forcing the defense to collapse, and that's creating things for himself and for other people, and it just juiced the offense. It gave it life when they weren't necessarily running all over the Grizzlies in the sense of like on the fast break. They were doing it by like off misses, getting going into that half court and just pushing themselves towards the basket and applying pressure at the rim. And RJ Barrett was kind of leading that effort there. He is, again, like been kind of at the forefront of what the Raptors have been trying to accomplish lately. He has been their vocal leader off the court, and he seems to be matching it on the court as well for the last like month and a bit. And when a guy like Brandon Ingram has been in and out of the lineup, he had a decent enough game tonight where BI was able to get going a little bit in the second half after a bit of a slow start. He finishes with 17 points. Again, 5 assists, like I mentioned, 6 of 11 from the field. Scotty, 10 points. His 10-plus assist streak, unfortunately, is over. He only had 6 tonight. But a guy like RJ Barrett kind of stepping up to take over that scoring load does alleviate some of the pressures from a guy like Scotty and Brandon Ingram. And again, having a tertiary scorer who's that elite of a play finisher in transition, who can kind of create in the half court as an on-ball player and off-ball as a cutter, does offer the Raptors a lot, and it does alleviate a lot of the concerns you have for their half-court offense. Because remember, there was a time when the Raptors were like basically a top 5 half-court offense, and when RJ Barrett went down, it kind of plummeted, and from there, and they still haven't really been able to recover. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to get back to that, but you can see why when RJ is clicking and when he's flowing within this offense, it does make things just look prettier all around and make things look easier for everyone. And tonight was an effort that was indicative of that. So for that, I wanted to show RJ Barrett some love. But with that being said, there are just 5 games left, my friends. A couple of big ones, obviously, and plenty of stakes, because even though the Raptors won tonight, They're still sitting in 7th. They're tied with the Philadelphia 76ers, who I believe also won. And Philly owns a tiebreaker over Toronto because although they were tied in the head-to-head, Philly owns it by division wins, I believe. So they are above Toronto. So the Raptors have 5 more games to find their way back into the top 6 and a playoff spot, hopefully. So they're going to need more efforts like tonight, please. And that will be great to see. But until then, that does do it for myself, Zulfi Sheikh. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live and for those listening the morning after. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to Locked On Raptors on all platforms. And don't forget to comment below if you have any thoughts. We will be back on Sunday. Yes, Dwayne will be back with me live after the Raptors visit the Boston Celtics. Like I said, a major Eastern Conference matchup and hopefully something that can shake the standings for the Raptors. So we will see you then, breaking it all down on the Raptors Postcast. Peace.